The Students for Justice in Palestine, which is one of the pro-Palestine groups on campus, probably the biggest one. The national organization just posted a poster that says, "Long live Salah al-Jab." I can't read behind him, and I don't know how to pronounce his name properly. But I don't know. He's some like jihadi. And then it says, "Death to the occupation, death to collaborators." Is it fair to say? I actually don't know who this guy is, so maybe it's not fair to say he's a jihadi. I don't know. He has the look, but maybe not. Forget about who that guy is. What about just the slogan? Death to the occupation. Okay, I get so death to Israel, but as Students for Justice in Palestine say that a lot. Death to collaborators. So that means death to the Gazans who are not totally on board with Hamas, I guess. Because Hamas right now, after the ceasefire and after the peace deal's kind of underway, Hamas is going door to door and pulling people out, Gazans, and killing them because they're accusing them of collaborating with Israel or the West or whatever. And I don't know. I have the least popular view on the Israel-Palestine conflict in that I broadly support Israel, but I criticize Israel pretty intensely sometimes. And I am sympathetic to the Palestinian people. My personal interest is really just in the Christian holy sites and the broader cause of justice. But I have no misconception that we're going to have a coalition with people we've been fighting for 1,400 years. So anyway, that satisfies no one and offends everybody. What is the proper Christian view on this kind of statement, on this conflict broadly? I know there's some Christians who are slavishly pro-Israel, the nation state of Israel. There's some Christians who hate the nation state of Israel. I don't know. What are we supposed to think?
Yeah, so I'm not a dispensationalist. I think some people who aren't as familiar with the different, eschatologies out there assume that everyone who is Protestant, evangelical, everyone who grew up Southern Baptist is dispensationalist. I know a lot of people who are. They've got their biblical arguments for that.
And also, Allie, can you explain to me? I'm not being cute. I don't really have a good definition of dispensationalism. Is that dispensationalism is the one that says the Jews don't need Christ, or some people say that's not an accurate description of? It's the one where you get beamed up at some point, or what is it? What does it actually mean? It goes back to John Nelson Darby and the Scofield Bible.
There's so many different parts of that. I did an episode on this to try to kind of explain it to people because it is confusing, but it's the belief in dispensations of grace, 7 dispensations of grace that were given by God throughout human history and that we see throughout the Bible. And there is the belief within that God kind of has a separate plan for Israel, that Israel is still God's chosen people, that when we read the Old Testament and when we read the prophecies, that we are still talking about Israel there. That is that belief, and that the church is a different covenant, that the church kind of has a different plan. Now, I will say, to be charitable, that those people still believe that the Jews have to be saved through Christ. They don't believe that there is no opportunity for them through Christ. But the reason why sometimes it kind of translates into a lack of evangelism to the Jewish people is because they do believe that there is going to be a separate time in the end times for the Jewish people to specifically hear and accept Christ. And so, yes, there is a rapture in the part of that. I mean, we all believe in the second coming of Christ, of course, but they believe that believers will be raptured up before the tribulation. Tribulation will happen. Jews will have their time to be able to be specially evangelized to, and then the believers and Jesus will come back. That's not what I believe. That's not the historic view of eschatology. I mean, we could go on and on about that, but I, of course, believe that all of God's chosen people are God's chosen people through Christ. Whether you are a Jew, whether you are a Gentile, that is God's covenant through the blood of Jesus Christ. And so I don't even remember exactly what the question
Well, then it ties it back into, because yes, there's some people who are dispensational because their view of religion leads them to say, well, we have to support the nation state of Israel because the Bible tells us to, basically. And so there are plenty. Look, I don't mean to deride these people. There are plenty of people who have that view. On the other hand, there are some people who are Christian and say, actually, the Bible tells me I have to just despise the modern nation state of Israel, or I can't accept it under any terms, or I don't know.
Yeah.
And so Well, I don't know. What are we supposed to think? Right now, go to hallow.com/Knowles. This month, join Hallow as they partner with Word on Fire, Bishop Barron's great Word on Fire, to bring you the story of all stories voiced by Jonathan Rumi from the hit TV series The Chosen. Our faith is incarnational. Sights, sounds, smells, they all matter. Starting on October 13th, immerse yourself and your whole family in the Word of God and in the stories that have shaped not only Western civilization, but all of salvation history. Then, on October 20th, join Jim Caviezel and Father John Riccardo for a prayer series on one of C.S. Lewis's most famous books, The Screwtape Letters. Think about this for a moment. The most dangerous lies are not shouted in your face, they're quiet. A compromise here, a distraction there, until all of a sudden you realize that you've given up all your ground. This is exactly what C.S. Lewis captures in his classic book. Throughout the Screwtape Letters, you can learn to guard against spiritual warfare and protect against the small compromises, self-deceptions, and distractions that lead us to damnation. I love it. Hallow is just absolutely fantastic. Screwtape, of course, is fantastic. I've read it multiple times. And you can get 3 months free right now at hallow.com/Knowles, Knowles. That is hallow.com/Knowles. Well, I don't know. What are we supposed to think?
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think the Christian has any obligation to support the modern state of Israel. I don't believe that they have any biblical responsibility to do that. However, probably like you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I think it's a good idea in general. Like if we have to pick, which I don't say that people have to pick. You could say, I'm not interested in what goes on in the Middle East. Okay, I think there's arguments for why America should be somewhat interested in that. But if I have to pick between Israel and pick between Hamas, yes, in general, I am going to support Israel in that conflict. If I have to pick a nation that is run by the Jewish people, that is generally democratic and generally respectful, it seems, of the idea of human rights, the more Western-leaning country in the Middle East, versus the barbarians that want to see me dead, then yeah, I'm going to choose Israel. I think that there's this really weird desire to ally with Islam, like in the Christian right, this belief that, oh, actually, we have more theological commonalities with Islam. Actually, they have a better view of Jesus than the Jewish people do. I think that is so completely wrong and depraved. You actually don't have to pick. That's kind of like a false choice. You're just a Christian. But it's just not true. This weird idea that somehow Muslims and Christians are going to like ally against the forces of evil. It's not true. It's not real. It's dumb. So
people seem to
as far
forget.
as politics go, I think it's better to support Israel. Go ahead.
Yes, going back, people forget that the conflict between Christendom and political Islam didn't start 20 years ago or, even a few hundred years ago or even in the Crusades. It started in 732, really, and it started in Poitiers, which is 150 miles outside of Paris. Not outside of Mecca, not outside of Medina, outside of Paris, because Islam was on the move, and thankfully Charlemagne's grandpa booted them out. But, they landed in Iberia, and they were in Iberia for 800 years. And I don't know, there's been a long-term conflict here. And also, to this point,
yes,
that Islam takes a more favorable view of Christ. I think it's worth remembering, the kind of distinguishing features of Judaism and Islam vis-a-vis Christianity are that Judaism rejects the resurrection, which is too bad because there's a lot of evidence for the resurrection and people should believe in it because even as an ordinance of reason, but also they should believe in it. However, Islam rejects the crucifixion. They say they crucified him not. And I'm reminded, I'm not as good at quoting chapter and verse as my Protestant friends are, but I think it's in the letter to the Philippians 3:18, I could be wrong about that, where St. Paul writes, "There are many walking now, and I tell you even weeping, who are enemies of the cross of Christ, because it occurs to me that Christ conquers death. He doesn't conquer death actually in the resurrection, though that's a sign that he's conquered death. He conquers death on the cross. And so, this kind of Gnostic or heretical view of Christ that you see in Islam, okay, I'm happy when people say nice things about my Lord, but they deny the central axis on which the whole world turns. That's not ideal.
No, not ideal. And their entire ideology is one that is based on pillaging and destruction. And everywhere they go, they infest the nation with more violence. That's just true as an ideology. I'm not saying every individual Muslim is violent or in favor of that, but certainly as a religion, as a worldview, it is one of chaos and destruction. And that is, of course, why their nations are the way they are. And to your point, this idea that, oh, just Christians and Muslims have been fighting for the past few years, even if we look at American history, at the beginning of American history, there was a fight against the Muslims. And I'm just very thankful that Christians then believed in a muscular Christianity that said, it actually is for love for my neighbor and love for women and children that I'm going to fight against this evil ideology. We have a very neutered Christianity today that believes that Christ's command to turn the other cheek means that we're not supposed to fight against true oppression. And that is completely wrong. And a lot of people have died because of that faulty belief.
Too many pacifists in the church militant, as a great priest friend of mine pointed out. That was a great clip. Now stop, ring the bell, subscribe. We'll see you next time.